Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. We're the Weaves of the Wheel community. I'm Suana Sedai. Today we're here to help raise funds for the Lightweaver Foundation, a charity that helps the poorest members of our society get access to the fundamental basics they need to survive and prosper. I know 2020 has been a really hard year for everyone, but it has hit some people so much harder. So if you are in a position to sit here and watch these shows, please consider donating. And it doesn't matter what the amount is, every little tiny bit helps. So please do that. So now that we've done that, on to what we're going to be doing today here at Weaves of the Wheel. So I'd like to introduce you to our community panel. And here we will be discussing what happened to the Seanchan after the last battle. So any of you viewers who are watching, if you're unfamiliar with Weaves of the Wheel, we're a social community of fans that anyone can get involved in various ways. And one of the things we offer our users is access to a storytelling and role play platform that's based in the Fourth Age, so a time after the last battle. And during this discussion, we'll be delving into the histories created by the Weaves of the Wheel community for the purposes of our storytelling game. And these are key points that our community has agreed on as a whole. But since we keep them generally quite brief, our panelists will be expanding on them using our knowledge of the Wheel of Time. So as a side note, since we may refer to timelines during this discussion and years in which events occurred, these may be referred to as ALB, which means after last battle. Feel free to jump in with your thoughts in the comment section below and consider joining us if you'd like to be involved with more of our discussions like these. You can find us across all the social media platforms just at Weaves of the Wheel, and we're also got a website over at weavesofthewheel.com. So without further ado, I'd really like to introduce you to a few of our community members who will be hosting this panel today. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Deiroe Sedai. She is of the Greyer Jar at Weaves of the Wheel. I'd like to introduce you to Mit, who is an Asha'man Mit from the Black Tower at Weaves of the Wheel. I'd like to introduce you to Helena Sedai of the Greener Jar at Weaves of the Wheel.
Hello.
And Vaska Sedai, who is also Greener Jar.
Hey.
And accepted Corina, who is soon to be raised to the status of Aes Sedai in our community. Hopefully any day now, fingers crossed. Okay, so without further ado, Helena is going to start us off with a discussion of what happened to the Seanchan after the last battle, and was there a civil war in the Seanchan?
So like Suana said, we often try to build the New Age, the foundations for New Age, and it's one of the most fun parts of, playing an RPG game in the Wheel of Time world, because you get to live and play in the world that you already know and love from the books, but you get to expand on it and to create a brand new stage for your characters to play in. With that in mind, you have to make political climate, you have to world build a bit in the future. And one of those things that we had to focus on is, what are the Seanchan doing? And here we start after the last battle. So in the first 5 to 7 years after the last battle, we assumed that Tuon, like the Empress, did not go immediately back to the Seanchan territories, but stayed a bit in the Westlands. And from that, we started to look into some of the causes that might provoke some unrest in the Seanchan, because they have been hit by some new knowledge and some new circumstances. So with the Empress gone and with the new facts coming to light, we were kind of leaning towards that there would be a civil war in the main continent. And we will talk a bit about why we decided that in our Fourth Age game, the Seanchan is, for the first almost 150 years, in the state of constant unrest. So first thing is probably the fact that she was not there. When the monarch is gone, the empire is a bit rocky. then
Yeah.
I was going to ask if Ro wants to take that further or.
Well, I mean, obviously they do. They're super. It's like Dune, if you want to slide, you've got this tightly wound society and everything is so under control. And what happens at the, spoilers, what happens at the end of Dune, Leto breaks that so that nobody's ever in that control again. And it causes all kinds of chaos. This is the same sort of thing. When you have such a controlled society, every aspect is very controlled. What happens? But war, because nobody can agree. You've got things going all over the place.
I was thinking one of the things that would go off like an atomic bomb would be the fact that Sul'dam are now known to be women who can be taught to channel. And there we have a big problem for an empire that relied on how right their system is in keeping the channelers collared or killed. And now those that were in a position of power and position of rank, now these people are just the same as those they are controlling. So how would you think that would, rock the society? Would it?
I have something to say to that, if it's okay.
Yeah, go on.
I think realizing Sul'dam and Damane are not different is a big thing in the Seanchan Empire, and I think and Tuon was not there. It's they all find itself a bit chaotic, and it's more than enough to have a civil war there. But I don't think it affected the rest of the classes, because the empires always tend to keep their class system. But it's for sure that they have a chaos and civil war.
I think that there's definitely, I think the whole entire thing would come down, because if you go back to the books, the Seanchan were at war within themselves for centuries, trying to get all these different tribal groups together. So you've got that, and that's why they have such a tight control over everything, because without that control, everything flies apart, because they're pulling in all these different groups and tribal groups together and forcing them to coexist. So the second that there is a minute for them to break out of that control, they're going to go for it. So even if it's not about Sul'dam and Damani, which it would be in the upper classes, the lower classes are going to take that excuse to run.
Yes, they have a very hard surface, but in the core, that empire is not as stable as it looks. I think that would be quite a big hit to their perception of selves, to suddenly realize, perhaps even, I know Robert Jordan was sometimes implying that they were aware that that's the case, but they were looking the other way, that there were people in Seanchan who were, very aware that that's like that they can channel, but it's something that it's the glue to the country, so they were, turning a blind eye. So do you think there would be like many groups, or do you think maybe it would be like two clear sides, like rebellions, or like classic civil war, one group versus another?
I think with the nobles there would be like two sides and maybe two different parties, but for like the common people, I'd say they'd split into tribes and like regions of the country.
Yeah, I have to agree with Corina.
Yeah, I mean, if it took them 800 years to consolidate, imagine, anything can topple that over if the queen is not there, if the queen is staying put in the Westlands for the first 10 years or so.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't they rely on the crystal throne quite a bit to keep their power in check too, or to keep a hold of their power, since it was a Terangriel?
Yeah, that too. I mean, what would you say, the lengths to which a country would do to preserve, the current state of affairs, I imagine that they would be pretty aggressive. They are quite a military country. They are very rigid. They are very strict. They would go to great lengths to cover it up at first, maybe, and then when it's out, to just kill it and not allow the word to spread.
I think there's nations in our own world that are very much like that, the very, very strict regimes. And it's not necessarily a military state, but they have groups that pay so close attention to everything that you do, which you do have in the Seanchan, the, what are they called? The truth seekers or no?
Mm-hmm.
The guys with the tattoos who go out and they purposefully search down dissent in the nation. So if you have the which the master of the deck in the chat said that the Sul'dam learning to channel is a state secret, they quietly disappear after they live for too long. I think it just is a continuation and more extreme, which is what would lead us to which leads the fourth age to having less Sul'dam, is that too many know. They have to get rid of the ones that know, and then they have to get rid of anybody that knows, because you have to keep that secret. It breaks the whole entire foundation of the nation.
Do you think there is like already a system set up for that we might not have considered?
The Death Watch, I think, right? We have one character in the community, Ross, who said like his character's secret, he's in the Death Watch, his character's secret mission is to take out Domani or Sul'dam who have gone bad. And I thought that was an interesting approach.
I'm thinking, who would go bad in a way to run away to the White Tower? Imagine the twist.
That would be really hard on the nation to admit that nobody wants to live this way.
Imagine it on an individual level, like you're a Sul'dam and suddenly, and you think your whole life, you think how you are the one to control these beasts, these channeling monstrosities, and then you're told, no, you can learn the same, and now everybody in the country doesn't think you're so cool as you were before, and now you're just a low level of what these are already. I would run away to the tower. I would be like, okay, now that I'm the same thing, now I'm going to go and make something of myself.
I don't think they accept that too quick. If I were them, I would think that maybe I was different in some ways, and it is not discovered yet. It's so hard to accept that I'm the monster that I hate. I don't think
it would take time. It would take quite a bit of time for the word to spread, I think, or maybe it would just blow up.
Traveling is discovered, and I think it's too hard for them to keep it as a secret.
Yeah.
Because all you have to do is see the leave. Go ahead.
Yeah.
these are really great points. I think one of the things that you guys kept touching on was the fact that, Tuon did stay in the Westlands for quite a period of time. And as such, at some point she would have had to make a decision to go back to Seanchan if she did want to consolidate the power. So what did happen with Tuon, and what did happen by extension with Mat as well? Corina, would you like to start that off?
Yes, so as you probably remember from the books, Tuon and Mat fell in love. I think they fell in love. I think Tuon did marry Mat for political reasons, but I think she loved him, at least some. And I think their romance is sweet, but that's just me. I personally think Tuon is a pretty cool character. Most people don't like her, but I think she's very determined, and she loves her country a lot. She's very devoted to it, but she does have some shortcomings. Anyway, so Mat and Tuon were both very influential in the last battle. Mat was, of course, leading the forces of the light, and Tuon was with her troops, And then after that, so what did they do? My first question is, how did they raise their kids? And according to the Weaves of the Wheel histories that we have, you can find this on the website, they had their first son in 2 years after the last battle. His name was Jane Arter. They had a daughter 2 years after that. Her name was Melovi Bodwin. and they had a third daughter named Mena-Atham a few years later. And this is to be noted also, in 7 ALB, Tuon left with the youngest daughter and went back to Seanchan to calm the civil war and to claim the throne. And so the 2 older children were left with Mat. So how do you think they raised their kids?
Who wants to go?
I'm
I-
imagining.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. You go ahead.
I was
You-
going to say, I'm going to imagine that there's probably going to be some conflict in how the 2 raise their kids. I mean, I know Mat was not necessarily the legal father of Oliver, but he's probably a good example to look at in the books with how Mat would interact with children and be a father-like figure. And of course, with Tuon in the royal family, typically they try to raise their kids to not hate each other, but see them as dangerous adversaries, because the whole goal is to compete for the throne and to compete to rule the country. So, you know, Tuon was assassinating her brothers and sisters. So I can imagine Mat's just going, no, we're not going to do that. And Tuon going, this is absolutely necessary. This is just how it works.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him even trying with her, like, we're not doing this, we're raising our kids the 2 Rivers way. I'm thinking he would be just that type of father that goes like, yeah, listen to your mother, and then, okay, kids, here is how we are going to do things.
Yeah.
I just can't. I mean, like, one, that's a really weird way to run your country. I mean, there's a whole reason that there's the whole heir and a spare thing that goes on, because what happens when somebody, like French history, you have 16 children and all of them died of the plague within like a couple weeks of each other, and you've got one left and they locked the room to keep them in there. Like, what do you do when if somebody dies and now you have no ruling family at all? That just seems such a weird way to run things, in my opinion. I do think that their relationship and parenting styles would be interesting, since they're in the Westlands in our histories, they're in the Westlands for a good chunk of these children's childhoods. And if I recall, the second oldest kills the first. So potentially you've got like a deviation in, some are going to be more leaning towards the Seanchan lifestyle, and some are going to be leaning more towards the Westlands lifestyle. And that's potentially going to be their downfall because their siblings who are Seanchan are going to gank them.
You think there would be one child that would go like completely Mat's way and be, no, this is not for me. I'm just leaving. I'm going to explore the waste. Just goodbye, people.
Peace out. Deuces.
Yeah.
Not for me.
According to the histories, one of the older sons killed his 4-year-old brother. So it would seem that one was like the one.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But I can say that one probably definitely took to the Seanchan way of life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
What?
there can be another thing to consider. At first, Mat was with Jane and Bodwin, and these names were so important for him. The main characters they were. So I think Tuon raised Mena, but the other ones are raised by Mat with Wasteland culture. But I think if there were some rumors that Terin was not from Mat, and maybe Mat and the first kid realized that, and they were angry. And I think Mat's style can accept that the first one killed the second. Maybe that can be the case. We don't know. And there were so many years that Mat, ruled Seanchan. So maybe he changed in a way that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Hard time
Or he ran
imagining
away
him
with that
ruling
child.
anything.
Sorry, go
No,
ahead. Go.
he would not run away. I cannot ever agree
He
to
would
that.
so run away.
No, he would not. Like, no matter how much time has passed, Mat is Mat, and his core is, and the reason he rarely gives his word is because he keeps it. He will always keep it. He will always keep it. As Swan said, you know, he runs. Who's going to be the one? Are you going to be the one who runs into the fire? Because he is. He will always be that person. So he made an agreement. He made a commitment to Tuon. He would stay there. He would hate every single second of it, but he would stay because he made the commitment to. You can't see him ever running away from that.
No, I agree that Mat loved her because
No, that I don't agree with.
yeah,
Go
I
on.
think that way because Mat was always with some pretty serving girls, but most of his stable relations were with dominant and powerful women. So I think he respect Tuon in a way that I think we can say he loved her because he was
In his
with her.
way.
Yeah.
That's
He
a
respected her.
long women's circle topic.
No, I don't think that. I think it's very much that you know, man goes to war in the 1940s in Europe and brings home a wife who speaks a completely different language than him, and they love each other in that time. But then she starts to learn to speak English. I'm American, if you can't tell. She learns to speak English, and suddenly they hate each other because she's not who he thought she was. Now that they can speak the same language, that feels very much the parallel to Mat and Tuon's, like, the longer they're together, the more they hate each other, but they're stuck because he will never walk away. And she's...
Oh, he would run. He wouldn't walk away. He would run.
No,
He would run,
he
yeah.
would not.
But he
He
knew
would
her, I don't
if
know.
maybe she told him to go. So I think that she's somebody who does not love easily. If she can manage it at all, it's in her own weird way. So I think that if it came down to it and she knew that the time came that she had to be rid of him, she would give him a head start. Maybe that's the only reason I can see he would leave.
Yeah. I like to think that's what happened, but I like to believe the best in them because I like both of their characters. And that leads me to the last question. What happened to Tuon? Did she die? Did she get assassinated? What do you think happened?
Who's the one who takes over after she dies? Is it a daughter or a son?
It's her daughter.
Yeah, it's
She kills her.
daughter.
She's the one.
100%. Yeah, gotta be. She killed all her siblings.
It would make sense.
Definitely.
And how would she have been assassinated if she was?
Oh, I
don't
haven't.
know.
I didn't go there.
Gray Man? I don't know.
So according
That's
to
my
the
personal
history-
headcanon for the original Empress.
That would make sense. And according to the history, she died in her sleep, supposedly. So it could have been poison or something like that. I don't know. It's subtle.
I would
I'm
vote
imagining
for
this
poison.
scene where you've got like this Sojin or however it's pronounced standing in a room that's like covered in blood, and Tuon's like body is torn all over the place, and he's like, she died in her sleep, man. It's such a shame. Yeah, I mean, sleep, it's a good way to go. She died in her sleep, everybody. That's
Don't look behind the
mental image
curtain.
I have.
Yeah.
It could have been absolutely anything. It could have been natural. It probably wasn't. And I like to think that it wasn't, because I think that kind of works with what I imagine this empire to be like. You know,
Savage.
there's anyone that goes out under natural circumstances. Okay, let's move on. So we were talking a little bit before about the Sul'dam and the Damani, and of course we're talking about the Sul'dam and the Damani that were actually from the Seanchan culture and were raised in that culture. But of course you've got the Seanchan in the Westlands now, which means that you've now got people who are being collared and potentially becoming Sul'dam in the Westlands, and you've got an organization of channelers in the Westlands as well. So Vaska, would you like to take over from there and tell us a little bit more about how you think that would have worked in the Westlands?
Sure. So I think you first need to look at the differences between the Westland culture and probably the Seanchan culture. I don't know if they would have been altogether that successful with getting people who willingly wanted to be a Damani, of course. Those would probably have to be forcefully taken. I don't think anyone wants to be collared. I could definitely see some people in the Westlands who are native to the Westlands finding out that they could be a Sul'dam. I think some of them probably looked at it as like, I'm a peasant, I don't have a great life. If I adopt Seanchan life, all of a sudden I'm this praised, looked upon person. But of course, from the Seanchan perspective, depending upon how long it's been since the last battle, you probably have a lot of people who are thinking, I don't want to be a Sul'dam because we know that they can channel, and it's a really shameful thing. So I think that at a certain point, they may have an easier time recruiting from the Westlands for Sul'dam than they would from their own homeland. But
What
I
a
think that.
twist.
But does anyone else have any kind of disagreement on that? Any take?
I think a very few channelers might want to become dominate if they were very scared of their power and they were worried they wouldn't be able to handle it because then like they don't have control over it and just someone makes them do it. But it'd take, I don't know, that'd be a very rare case, but it's possible.
I don't think
You
it's
think
super
some of them
rare.
would rush to the tower?
I think maybe some of them did. I think it also depends on, I don't know, how well maybe the Sul'dam were able to sell it, because you do have to remember that when you go to the tower, you're not in a privileged or praised position. You are stripped of all your possessions. You watch. I think at some point in the books they describe having like novices have their clothes from home and watching them burn. To like fully
Right.
signify you have to give up everything in order to go to the tower. And I'm sure you have to give up some things to be a Sul'dam, but you get to wear a fancy dress. You get to, order people around, and you're in a position of respect, at least to their perspective.
No, but what I was thinking, if some in the Seanchan were starting to believe that maybe the tower is ultimately a better solution, because then when all is done, then at the end you're free and you still have some kind of rank, which Sedai is in the Westlands, and your place as Sul'dam is maybe a bit, deteriorating in the Seanchan.
Depending on which part, where in the 200 years you are. So where we are.
How far from the last battle? Yeah.
Almost 203. I don't think that it's a bad thing to be a Sul'dam anymore. I think that's very much been buried, squashed down deep. But back in the beginning, it would be a hard sell. Kind of like, would you like to become a Damane? No. No, thank you. But I do think being an Aes Sedai is a hard sell too, which is why you have so many runaways in the books. Washing pots isn't exactly like hard, but day after day, the monotony, you're only allowed to handle so much, and all you can think about is and see all the time are all these amazing people throwing leaves all over the place that you just barely can tell, and you want to push and get there. An alternative being that you can be somewhat respected and just right out the gate start doing stuff might be appealing to some as an alternative to being an Aes Sedai, which are looked down on by a majority of the population. Being an Aes Sedai, in general, people don't like them.
Maybe they like them better now.
Are we sure that they
Everybody
don't
loves me.
recruit for Sul'dam, being Sul'dam? Do they pick only Damanes, or do they pick Sul'dam too?
Well, you can't pick a Sul'dam because that's the people born innately, but not innately. Like, they have the ability, but they would never know if they never
people
were
who
triggered.
can be taught. Yeah.
Right, people who can be taught.
Maybe some years passed after the last battle. Maybe they knew and they scared of 3-circle test for being Aes Sedai, and it's so hard to be educated in the tower. Maybe they can pick being a damane. I don't know. I can't think any other thing, really.
I don't recall their process for, I remember something about like in their 13th year, they pull all the girls and boys of certain age and like put the or just girls, put the collar around them to see if it works.
Yeah, and
or something like that.
The tea.
But like
pork root also.
I don't know how they discover Sul'dam. Like, is it just luck of the draw whether or not they put the bracelet or the collar? I don't know. That might not ever be covered, but I lost my point. Somebody go on.
No, that is a good point. I guess, like, how would they discover Sul'dam versus Damani, and how would they incorporate fork root into that? That's something I didn't really consider, and I didn't think that was really gone over much in the books. You were right on that.
Yeah.
And then I know at some point I don't remember exactly what year. I would have to look up the exact year, but in our histories we have where the Sul'dam and Damani and the White Tower have a delegation from each faction, and they try and recruit from each other. And I was just trying to think through, like, what kind of person, say, would want to go from one faction to the other. And of course, it also changes depending upon what year we are in our histories, with the Seanchan being a seeing Sul'dam as, respected people, or people that are just like Damani because they can channel too.
Right.
So.
Well, I think we get it's like 1 week or something a year that we're allowed.
I thought it was twice a year, but I might be remembering it wrong.
I think
actually,
it's
like every 6 months.
Actually, it's recruiting from countries, from regions, not from, each other's pool.
Well, I think
so. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really concern so much the faction itself. It's not going to be switching. Nobody's going to be switching places. It's more like they can go into Andor, and they can go to cities and towns and test girls. And if those girls want to go and become Sul'dam or be colored, then they have the permission to do so once a year, to see if anybody wants to come with them. And the tower has the same right to do that in the Seanchan territories, in a way to extract those that in no circumstances will, agree to being colored or being the controller. So that's the part of the agreement, that once a year you have the right to go into the territory of the other and offer your services and your positions, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's the 1 week a year the Black Tower and the White Tower can go into New Ciandar and go around and test and offer leaving the Seanchan territories. But I mean, sucks for everybody not in that week.
What are the chances? What are the chances that you would be, like, if you wanted to say you were colored in the Westlands, maybe they would be planning to take you back to Seanchan at some point, because they could probably legally do that if you were a Damani. Imagine you're not at that one place at that 1 week of the year. Chances are pretty slim. But
and you just have to like bunker down and hope that nobody discovers you in the meantime, or use the Kin's underground tunnels and get out.
Yeah, I always think that when it came to the issue with the White Tower recruiting and the Sul'dam recruiting, is I always figured that there would be very fuzzy lines between how much a channeler could access Seanchan held lands, and by channeler I mean like a White Tower channeler or a Black Tower channeler, before they were at risk themselves with the Seanchan. So one of the things, this is where we start sort of talking about the Dragon's Peace and the opportunities that you're sort of giving the established channelers in the community, in the Westlands. So if we move on to talking about, you know, what happened with the Dragon's Peace, because the Seanchan always seemed like the ones that were most likely to have issues with the Dragon's Peace and it not really favor them too much. So, Mick, would you like to take on this topic from here?
Yeah, of course. I want to mention about the very end of it. 2 years after the last battle, Seanchan had discovered a horde of male Adam, but they kept it as a secret and experimented secretly. And 23 years later, they passed to a law that male channels will no longer be collared, but killed if captured. By declaring this law, they announced the truth. I mean, the news about they were experimenting for it. And I think Black Tower had the right to think it was a breach of Dragon's Peace. And if the Dragon's Peace hadn't ended this way, I think the next one was White Tower and Sedai. I want to ask to you that what do you think about Seanchan actions that caused Dragon's Peace to end, and did they really break the rules or Black Tower overreacted it?
I would
Well, I
say
mean, go ahead, Corina.
I would say they probably did break the rules, just knowing the Seanchan, they're not really type of rule following. They just want more land and they want a bigger empire. But maybe they didn't. I don't know.
I think, I mean, I definitely agree. I think that the Seanchan pushed that boundary to an extreme by basically executing every male channeler, which they did, some 20 years into the Dragon Peace being in effect. So like pretty much right off the bat into the peace, they started just executing channelers in their borders. But to play what I like to call Dragon's advocate, I can understand why the White Tower did what they did, even though the Black Tower is like, this is no bueno, we can't do this. We need to save our people, and then war. You have the White Tower who's like, literally, we just avoided a war for 100 years. Let's wait and build ourselves to a point to be able to handle it. And understandably, the Black Tower's response is, we cannot wait. These people are literally being murdered daily, or who knows how many male channelers there are that can be found. So like, we have to do something. So I get both sides of this argument. Let's wait until we're prepared to handle it. And then no, it cannot wait because people are literally dying. It's the macro, micro visions of what's going on here.
I think Black Tower could act more political in this way, but I always thought that White Tower should act because I always thought Westlands and channelers have a common sense about being a channeler, and I expected more support from White Tower, actually.
Yes, the tower is always the tower. Do not mix, do not stir, do not do anything that doesn't suit you. And yeah, they would probably be very, subdued and let's just sit this out and see this from 10 angles and then maybe have a little reaction. And then if you're
First,
all
we're
dead,
gonna
then we'll say,
bicker
"This is
for
not
20 years about it.
Let's bicker. Let's make a long whole session about how we're not going to do anything.
They are like ODRs.
It's not even that they don't care. It's literally just like, I mean, you're pulling the strings of how many nations and trying to get them all to combine. You've got Kaimlin or Kaimlin and Carrie-En and their whole entire thing going on, because even if one person's ruling them both, they're still going to bicker. And then you have all the other who cares about nations and the borderlands. So like, and they just got out of a war to end all wars, literally. And like, it's kind of hard to want to pull get people involved when it's really not their problem. Like, why are they supposed to care? Those nation, Amadisia, most of Terrebonne, half of Volterra, don't exist anymore. They're all part of this other nation. Why should they care what happens to the people in those anymore? What does it affect them?
Yeah, Kremlin is a bit far, but it will come to that if Black Tower didn't respond. Okay, so after the situation of male channelers will be killed by Seanchan if they captured, 13 years passed, and Black Tower directed a mercenary army formed in an attempt to push back the Seanchan borders. This was 25 years after the last battle, and 46 years border raids become a daily occurrence. They thought that Damane and Mat's dragons are still a big advantage. So I want to ask that, do you think that Seanchan was succeeded holding what they already had, or can we count them as a failure because they were keeping they already had? I mean, what they won by this ending dragon piece?
I think they won themselves more time to prepare to hit back harder, but not much else.
Yeah, they prepared all the armies and came here, but they couldn't take anything else, so they wanted to prepare a new dragon's piece, and they gave more in the end, I think.
Yeah, I think they would be pretty fairly matched with the Black Tower against the Domine and Match Dragons, because the Black Tower, even from the beginning, was like made to create weapons, basically, so they're very good at destruction. But then so are the Domine, so I don't know. I feel like the Black Tower would fight harder because they truly believe in what they're fighting for, but I guess the Domine don't have a choice, so maybe, I don't know.
I think it's double frustration for Black Tower to face this male channeler issue with Seanchan, and White Tower's not supporting it. I think it ruined all the power inside Black Tower. I think they were so alone in that situation.
Yeah, they were abandoned by pretty much everybody at that point, which is really sucky, except for Ilian. They didn't abandon Black Tower, not that they had a choice.
I wonder what would happen if they didn't fight back. I mean, Ilian.
Would there be one? But I mean, that's the same thing for most of the nations, is like at this point where we are, Amadisia doesn't exist. It is no longer a part of the Westlands. Terrebonne is mostly just the Almoth Plain. And Alterra, they got half. And then we got the White Cloaks sitting there, stopping that plug.
But you have to take into account the way the Seanchan run things. They basically let you have everything the way it was. Mm-hmm. So, and they make your life pretty comfortable. And if you don't rock the boat, it's not that disturbing living under their rules. So perhaps if someone had like an economic incentive, they would go, oh yeah, come here and repair my swamp, and we will open the gates and welcome to Ilian and give us your money.
No.
I mean, if we
speaking personally as a Ran, no. They don't want it.
So just for everybody that probably got lost already, we have we have made the borders pretty much the same as they were, because people like playing in a world they know, and even if we like going crazy and going off in world building, we just try to imagine events without post last battle world would have a natural progression if we were thinking in terms of how things work in the real world, but then we are trying to keep it a bit close to the book so we can play in the world we know and love and don't change it as much. So probably those borders are not as as different as they are, the first time around. So the only change would be if we plugged one of those holes like we did with, Altara, and not letting in this time period we did not let them have the entire Altara, so they might move into Ilian a bit. If you want some power, then you have to go where you're allowed to.
Before we close up this particular discussion, the master of the deck in the chat said, strategically giving up the Seanchan continent, it's the only way the Seanchan could possibly survive as a culture is to subtly encourage the other Westland channelers to make raids on the continent, which is like a really good point. But we do in community try to keep the game, as we call it, as close to the books as we can. We don't want to push too far because we still want it to be recognizable to people coming out and looking for Wheel of Time, to be able to find us and recognize this world that we play in as Wheel of Time, which is why like there are some advancements, like we have trains and stuff like that because it's in the book, but then there are other advancements that might make sense for the time frame we're supposed to play in that we don't have, because we want it to be still something that you can look at and go, oh, this is Wheel of Time.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point, Ro, because yeah, we have so many people that do come into the community and they want to play and they want to tell a narrative that's of the books that they love. They don't want to defect too far away. So there is, I mean, we have so many, when we're all working together and as a big group, we work together in chats and we sort of say, what do you think would happen? And some of the stuff they come up with is absolutely incredible and it's so amazing. And it's very hard sometimes to have to pull it back a bit and say, as much as I love this idea, as great as it is, and honestly, some of them are so fantastic. You have to think about, okay, this is for we want to be for everyone who's a fan of the books. So we don't want to move too far away that someone might come in and get really, well, this is way, way, way too different. And this is not how I would have personally imagined it. So it's always kind of finding that nice, delicate balance between them, but also, still having fun with it at the same time. So now that we've sort of spoken about the dragons piece, and I also noticed that Master of the Deck stated that the dragons piece agreement was just a way to kind of make a coexistence, but it's probably not going to hold. It's not going to be that realistic. Let's talk about what happens after the dragons piece. I'm gonna hand it over to Deiroe here, and she's going to tell you about what happens after the dragons piece with the Seanchan.
Okay, so we've kind of discussed a little bit about the borders, where they lie, where we are in the stories, which is almost in 203 ALB after the last battle. All of Amadisia is gone. Most of Terabon, the line really divides along the Andahar River. And then half of Altara, currently I think it's like So Harbor is kind of where the line lies, but it fluctuates because of like the White Cloaks and the Seanchan kind of, they push as far as they feel comfortable with it without breaking anything that's going to cause, hopefully would cause a clapback from the Westlands. But as somebody who has an Ilianer character, one of the only ones in community, because Ilian is kind of the Gowan of nations, apparently, I do be rather attached. So it made me think you have the mountains and the forest to the north, which really kind of funnels. So even if they push past the White Cloaks, they're going to be slowed because they have to go through these areas. And then you have all of this land to the north, which really is most of their focus has been in Abu Dar is their fortress. So it's kind of hard to move north. It makes the most sense to me, strategically speaking, to start going east towards, right? towards Ilian. But you do have a lot of strategical disadvantages there, like in my mind, probably like pine barrens and bogs. I relate Ilian so much to New Orleans with this bog, and you have a city, the bayou, and then the city party all the time. Do we think that they would make the effort, because they're pushing out, and Ilian is not super popular among the other nations, as we know. Especially Tyr has been trying to take over them forever. Do we think that if Ilian was annexed by the Seanchan, would anybody bother to do anything about it? Would that be worth breaking the peace to fight back if it was like a peaceful annex? What do we think?
I'm sorry, I'm just reading the chat. You know, Ilian is nice in October.
Or like 1 month out of the year.
Hey, it's a great party time. You don't know. It's one thing, one festival sliding right into the next one. It's a great time. But they have suffered a lot in the Weaves history, both between Tyr and the Seanchan. I just wonder, would anybody besides Tyr actually care enough if the Seanchan just went
against? I mean, I'm sure that a lot of them would be like, "Oh, that's unfortunate," but I don't know. Yeah, like it'd be sad, but it's like trying to rally one small country against a ginormous Seanchan empire with Mat's cannons and the dragons and the Damani and Sul'dam. I mean, that's the reason why the Seanchan were able to take over so much of the Westlands, is because they have a very well organized army that the scattered, if you will, countries of the Westlands did not really have as cohesive of a militaristic unit.
Right.
So I don't think a lot of people would be willing to risk it.
I mean, Helena made a good point much earlier, that would Ilian, I personally don't think so based on my perception of the Ilian people, but would Ilian want that? They've been economically destroyed for so long. Would they want somebody just finally step in and fix all of the problems and just live under that roof of protection, even if it means giving up a whole lot of freedoms?
Depends on, I think, what class you are in Ilion too, because if you're of the ruling class, you're going to be like, I don't like this at all. I have to swear allegiance to a new leader or I die. But then probably people who are just like your everyday peasant folk are just going to be like, oh, I have to swear to a new leader who's going to treat me exactly the same and I can go on with my day and we get better paved roads maybe. Yeah, it's a great deal.
No, so we've basically just established that
No,
Ilian is really the Gowan of
It's great. It's really great. Ilion's great.
I love it, but I'm the only one. Just like me with Gowan, I'm the only one.
You're not the only one. I mean,
I'm one of five.
I'm just being, like following a certain logic where they might say yes to it. But if I was going as myself and if I was going as my character, I would go like, no, you're not having that. You're not having anything. You're not having an inch more of the Westlands. So in my opinion, it would come down to what the towers want, because, I am that arrogant and I think the White Tower rules the world. So if the tower wanted to help, then it would help. And I think, it might be a small country, but it is a whole country and it is Ilian. And I think it would be, like, enough is enough. No, we're not giving you Ilian.
I mean, it sets a dangerous precedent, right? Because what right above Ilian is Murundi and Geldon, and
it opens the door.
Like, at what point do you say, well, I mean, like, who cares about Murundi? Because, I mean, what's going on there besides corn? And who cares about Geldon? Because what's going on there besides mining? Like, how much do you give up because you really just don't care about that nation specifically? At what point do you say,
and many
no
would
more?
argue that we have as well.
Oh.
Dragons allow them to have anything. Like, why aren't they back in Seanchan completely? So no, You're not having Ilian, you're not having Altara, you're not having anything. Like we finally have peace, and finally is everything okay? And now you're going to move up? No, you won't.
No, no more. I mean, I definitely feel like Tyr. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Suana.
It's all good. It's been great, but we have, believe it or not, the hour has gone, and I know, guys, I did say to you guys it would go really, really quickly when you get into discussions of world building, and you have so many feelings about what would have happened and where it would have happened. It gets very, very exciting, and the time can just pass. So we definitely would love to have more of these discussions. So if anyone wants to follow us on YouTube, we are Weaves of the Will. So come and check us out. And we're also mainly on Instagram. We do have Discord as well. So if you're interested in joining a social community of fans, and there's lots of things that you can do. If you want to create a character and you want to get involved in world building, then by all means, just drop us a message. We'd like to announce Sonia Bratz as the winner of the raffle in the comments. So congratulations to Sonia. And thank you so much to everyone for watching. Weaves of the Will, we're on YouTube. We are on a website. We are on Instagram, Discord. You can find us very, very easily. And make sure that you do donate to the cause, the Lightweaver Foundation. Help out the most poorest members of our society this time of year, because it's been a really sucky 2020, but it's been far more difficult for some people, and anything that you can do to help and support is really greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that we get to see you soon over at Weaves of the Will.
Bye everyone.
Bye.